What is up, Overwatch community? My name is Trips, and welcome back to another episode of Watchpoint. We actually have a guest on the show this week, which is awesome. But first, I'm going to welcome back Vulture.
Hi.
And Yiska.
Hello.
And I want a little bit of help. If you want to just introduce yourself, Matrym? Is that how you pronounce it? Matrym?
Yeah, no, my first name's Matt. I just make it super simple. So it comes from back in the old WoW days when everybody just used the first the first three characters of your name and just said that inside of Vitrilla. Predominantly I do a lot of semi-pro and professional Overwatch casting. I think at this point, I have done 37 tournaments at present count since the launch. I did a couple before beta, but we won't count those because they weren't very good. I've done League of Legends casting before that for about a year or so beforehand. So I got about pretty common inside the scene, but not like on the E-leagues or anything.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. So basically what we want to cover this week is we're going to go over Season 2 in its entirety, the new things that it brought in, what happened during the season as far as meta, what it looks like now at the end, and basically what to expect in the future for Season 3. Yiska, you said you had a few specifics questions that you wanted to ask, or...
I mean, we could just talk how the season started, right? So
okay. As far as Season 2, I mean, outside of meta, obviously it brought in the new ranking system. So I guess we can start there. Going from the old, I guess I'll call it MMR, but it's not really MMR system, where it's just that long span of how many points you get and there's no deviation too much from just 1 to 100. How do you think the system has worked a lot better? I mean, barring, obviously, they have admitted that they place people too squished together in like the plat gold area. But besides that, how do you think the system works? And I guess I'll toss it over to the guest first.
Well, as far as the base ranking system, I think it's a little bit more pleasurable to play in. I think it was really annoying whenever you were trying to rank up that you would get like little smidgens of an experience bar, so it felt like you weren't really moving towards anything. Yeah. It's much better to have like a 3,256 score and have it go to 3,258 than it is to still be, 60 and then move from 60 to 60.1. There's just something that's a little bit more gratifying inside that. Past that, I don't necessarily know. The big change for me in Season 2 that I felt was most beneficial was the Timebank system, and especially how that affected esports to move away from stopwatch, because I personally wasn't a fan of stopwatch.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. It also, like, Timebank in itself kind of legitimized the two other game modes that weren't, payload, and I think, in the pro community, though, still barely anyone likes 2CP except like Rogue, and because if you're good at something, you most of the time like it, right?
Yeah, right.
And but I think it also helped me appreciate 2CP a little bit more. Still have a couple of issues with certain maps, but King of the Hill was always... I don't think there was a super big shift in that sense. Was there any change to King of the Hill? I forget. Did they introduce best of 5?
Yeah, it went from best of 3 to best of 5, didn't it?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah. Shortening overtime definitely helped for it too.
Yeah.
That I love, specifically I love playing it, but I love watching it in pro play, because you get those moments whenever you get what people usually call infinite overtime, whenever there's somebody standing on a cart and you know that this is the last team fight and how far can they make it push. I think it adds an excitement to Overwatch, specifically spectating, that wasn't there before, because beforehand it would be like, oh guys, they didn't make the time, and they would just call the match and you didn't get to watch the play of the game, and it was just done, and you're like, oh well, that's ungratifying.
Yeah, it's honestly weird how, even ourselves, when we started and we were talking about how they should introduce, stopwatch and they should stop all this stuff, it seemed like there was a big backlash and fight between the two sides of what the pros were doing and what Blizzard wanted to do with their actual competitive scene. But it feels like it's everyone's kind of come to an acceptance. Blizzard's inched a little bit towards what the pros wanted, and they've changed it up, so everyone's kind of come to an agreement at this point.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting compromise that both sides came to. I remember doing a cast where we were talking about how we needed a compromise and someone needed to give somewhere. And it's pretty neat to see that compromise just sort of come out over time, and it's not a bad one.
in general, I've felt that Blizzard's been pretty good about this game specifically and trying to listen to what the players are saying. They have a way that they want the game to be played, and you can tell by like whenever they were like, no, we don't want stopwatch. Too bad. We're not doing it that way. And you can see that with the Overwatch League, that they have plans. They have this scope that they're trying to do. But at the same time, while they're trying to get to this end goal, they're still hearing what the community says and trying to work into it. And I think that's nice, especially coming from some games like League of Legends where that didn't happen so much. It was just their way or the highway.
On that point, my favorite change this season was one hero limit.
I was actually just looking up exactly when that went in because there was a question. And that is something, I mean, that's a huge topic in general because of even people are bringing this up with the solo queue in our comments. People are saying that, yeah, they say there's going to be no solo queue, but they went back on the one hero limit thing, and it's a benefit. I love playing, 6 Winstons and stuff like that. But even if you're playing like the more competitive no hero limit, where it's like usually 2 of one something, until people started to go, when was the King of the Hill thing with the Tracers, where they would just, the casters lost and they just had nothing to say. I don't remember exactly when that was.
It was before that. There was the horrible comp it was just 2 Genjis and 2 Lucios, and it's 2 Genjis and 2 Zenyatas were the big point of it, where you would just throw the Harmony Orb on Genjis and just let them go run around. And this was back like, I don't know, 2 months into the beta, but it was the most annoying thing to watch. You're like, oh, cool, it's Genjis flying at each other and never dying, because that was before they had the line of sight changes with it. I felt it was a needed change without a doubt.
I hated the double Winston comp. That was my least favorite comp.
As me and my brother always went double Winston. As someone who played it, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But it is annoying to play against. And it just, I think there's still probably people who like that idea and feel like they've been kind of shafted into the corner with in the arcade, the no limit thing. But it just doesn't make sense. When you look at any other character, like hero brawler type deal, because this is kind of like a MOBA-ish, at least set up for the character selection, you can't play 2 of the same character. It's just not balanced. Either you make them underperforming as one, or you make them overperforming when there's 2 of them. So I'm in agreement. It's 100% such a good job, and I'm glad that they added it to quick play too.
Yeah, because that was my big beef, is like whenever I don't know if you guys are like me, whenever I want to go practice, I play quick play. Yeah. I hate the fact that you can't actually practice how you're going to play ranked inside of quick play before rolling out the one hero limit. And I know everybody wanted to run the 2 Winstons like you're talking about, because every once in a while you do want to do the cheese. Everybody played Genji, like you type in match chat like, oh, Genjis, let's go, and you just do that. But you couldn't actually effectively practice for ranked in anywhere except for ranked, and that was troublesome for the long-term benefit of the game.
Yeah. I use it both as warm-up, and if you start losing in ranked, you still want to play the game if you're not tired, but you don't want to continue your lose streak.
Yes.
So hero, I guess the tier system hasn't really affected us too much. The one hero limit is a good thing, and we're all in agreement on that. Was there anything else that the overtime as well? The overtime was actually an extremely good change. Was there anything else that Season 2 brought in by itself?
Wasn't it basically Anna that was introduced in Season 2? And that is actually one interesting thought I entertained, is like, when Anna was introduced, the qualifiers for the Atlantic Showdown were that they shut down Anna for that patch. Obviously, all the other changes were live, but nobody was allowed to play Anna. And the pro community and the entire community was like, wow, that's bullshit. All the other changes are live. Why would you not play that hero? I wonder if someone, now in hindsight, found out how Anna was going to shape this season in terms of meta, if people would have still cried. Like, just imagine playing exactly the meta we've been facing all seasons, so to speak. This sort of defined meta of either the NIP comp or the Beyblade. I wonder if there would have been really, such an outrage against the ban if they knew beforehand that Anna was going to be so dominant in a way,
Well, you have to remember back whenever Anna first came out, everybody thought that she was not good. Like a lot of the pro players were talking about, oh, she's a trash hero. She doesn't actually do anything. She doesn't heal very well and all this other stuff. And then, there's some, I'll admit, I was on the front lines of it, and I was like, dude, she has a stun, she has, the highest HPS per second, and that ultimate's broken. How can we do that? I think that the reason why, there's a big thing that happens with pro players is they have their comfort zone, and they don't like to step out of it a lot. That's how come you don't see Eichenwald played a lot in pro play on a regular basis, because they haven't experienced it enough to feel comfortable to play. And I think that a lot of times the community always has a gut reaction to any change that occurs, and I think that's kind of the general synapses of everything we're talking about right now is anytime something new comes out, everybody's just like, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like this time bank system. I don't know if I like Anna. I don't know if I like one hero limit. And then after about 2 weeks, everybody's like, oh yeah, okay, this is kind of okay.
I think we might be facing that with Sombra right now. There's a lot of community talk about how she's kind of terrible, doesn't do a lot of DPS, and has less survivability than they'd wish. And I sort of feel like they're missing a certain type of playstyle that can be quite good with the character.
I think that she has an extreme amount of strategic value. I think Sombra, the fluctuations that she can play, everybody talks about her hacking, but I think it's the maneuverability and how she can play with her teleporter is the key point. The ability to throw in the teleporter and get into a position that you shouldn't be in, stealth yourself, and then wait for a Lucio or a Mercy or whatever the support is, Anna. Let's say you're playing against an Anna comp or a Beyblade comp, the ability to just instantly have a Sombra hiding behind, not even do any damage, just step out and be and then make it to where you can no longer use the Anna ultimate and have your team engage. I think it's the thing. I think she requires communication to play well, and so I think she's going to do. But I think in pro play she's going to be amazing.
We can all speculate as much as we want, but we still have yet to see. Even I don't think the first couple weeks they're going to unlock her extreme potential. It's going to be the Anna story all over again.
Oh.
It just takes a while to flesh out. People are saying things like Sombra doesn't have enough damage. Her gun yet has a lot of bullets, but it's the spread on it is ridiculous, and she can't really hit anything unless she's face to face with it. She's on par with Reaper, how close you have to be. And actually, that's a weird way to say it, because I know a lot of people have said against exactly what you're saying. You don't use the teleporter to engage; you use it for escape. So do you think that it's more so the opposite? Do you think that it can be used as a positioning tool rather than escape?
I think it can be used as both. I would see it as an ambush. If we're going to talk about from a strategic standpoint, it could be used to get out of a fight. But I think one of the two strongest ways that it can be used is, let's say you're playing in King's Row and you're a defender, you can now position, you can throw up into that top balcony position and transition yourself up there and let the whole team come down underneath of you and drop down. And then at that point, you should have your teleporter back up to escape back out if you need. But I think that without a doubt, the ability to throw your teleporter in or to drop down from a hidden spot and then just blow your ultimate, drop down everybody's shields, counter a Lucio ultimate, drop the Reinhardt shield, whatever. And then I think that at some point, you're going to start seeing her played as a sacrificial lamb in addition to the Tracer style. You'll see her get thrown into a comp, and her job is to kill a support or kill a key member. And it doesn't matter if she dies. That's her job. Kind of like how originally Tracer was, but Tracer's got a little bit more survivability with her recall. So when you play Sombra, you have to commit, which I like. I think that gives her a different style of play. Is you either have the in or you have the out, and you have to make a pick. And I think that's going to be the choice that you're going to have to play around. Is sometimes you are going to want to use it to go in, and sometimes you are going to want to use it to go out.
Okay. Before we get too down the rabbit hole of Sombra, because that's more so season 3, I want to back up a bit and focus on the Beyblade and the NIP comp, or the 3 tank 3 support comp. Do you think that any of that's going to bleed over into season 3? Do you think, or rather, what do you think was the most effective and long-lasting comp?
My personal opinion, I would say that, God, I hope the Beyblade comp goes away. I'm so tired of casting the Beyblade comp because it's super. One, I think it's not fun to watch because it's a lot of let's just shoot at each other. Oh, Reaper has ultimate, now we go. And I don't think that that's entertaining. I think at some point somebody's going to develop a hard counter for it, and I think that there are some that already exist.
Does the Anna nerf the speed boost nerf, does that nerf it enough to not run it, or do you think Lucio will just add that little bit of speed boost you need with the Beyblade?
I don't know. Like the most beautiful Beyblade comp that I have seen is actually again on King's Row. Whenever somebody went and hidden like right before point 2, they where there's that walkway that goes right above point 2 and right after the streets phase. They went and hid in that room back there behind the boilers, waited for everybody to run out, and as they ran down and jumped down, they got hit with the Anna ultimate. I think that style of Beyblade comp is fine. What I don't like is, okay, Reaper's just going to go in and spin around and die again.
Yeah.
I don't think that with the present changes, it's going to be enough to kill it. But I'm hoping that perhaps like the use of Sombra to be able to jump in and disable Anna might be the counter for that. Like if you see a Reinhardt, like if you see the Reaper coming at you, your Sombra's job is to jump in and then hack Anna, and then voila, the comp doesn't work as well anymore. But again, I don't know, because then Anna can just you choose a new target and then a new problem happens.
At least with this change, if there's a Lucio on both teams, it can kind of go par to par as far as speed goes. So you can kind of boost out while they boost in and give up some ground and probably not get totally team wiped, is my guess. But yeah, it's still going to be pretty strong, I would guess.
Yeah.
What about
the thing is, obviously, like when people bring up that, okay, maybe the Beyblade is not weakened in a sense that the speed is gone because you can still lose your speed boost. Well, that happened anyway, right? Yeah. The Reaper was actually speed boosted. And if you're actually looking statistically at the entire season, you would think, like, it obviously feels like it was the Anna meta. It actually really, really was Lucio statistically, right? Like Lucio's, if I'm looking at the Captain Planet meta reports, I think there was not a single week where he wasn't the highest picked character. And I think there were 6 meta reports. I exclude the World Cup because I don't think it's very, representative of actual play, but high level play. But in other senses, there were, I think, 3 meta reports where he was like 95% pick rate, right? So Lucio was actually the Lucio season again, right?
Again.
Well, it's kind of interesting because if you look at like Korea, they don't lean on Lucio as far as we do. I mean, but let's be honest. The purpose of supports is to kind of fix mistakes that team makes. You use Lucio for changing position if you get caught out or if you need to get in. It's to solve a problem. That's what supports do. And I think just the Korean mindset of how they approach games is very focused. They have singular tasks and they try to execute. I don't think Lucio fits into that comp. So we see some different variances where they don't lean as hard on Lucio as we do. And I don't know if that's just because we were going for more of generic styled comps where they go for more focused comps. So as metas change, I think that's going to be what defines moves of Lucio out more than anything else. Like bring back, like we have Zenyatta who's kind of useful, Symmetra that's never useful inside of most pro play, and you have Mercy which is okay right now. But until we start getting more solid supports, I don't think that we're going to see in the West Lucio really move out of that position. He's just got too much utilitarian purpose that he brings to a team, and that's all that the West teams to lean on is utility picks instead of focused picks.
Yeah. I think it's not only that he is great at negating the mistakes your team makes in terms of positioning, especially, but it's also offensively. It's like a team is running at you at 100 miles speed. Some of them are, Winstons and everything. Like you have very little time to react, or it can be very, overbearing. And I think, especially in new games, aggressive strategies will always, outperform the defensive ones in a sense that you kind of need to learn to react in a way and also keep your cool. And like, there's always this shift that, in the start, the aggressive, like someone invents a strategy and everyone's like, oh, okay, what do we do now? And then they realize, okay, we can do A and B. And I think Koreans are a lot better at figuring these stuff out on the fly, and also, just strategically, like just leaning back into this push and actually letting, play with the punches, so to speak, right? So, and this is something that I hardly see like many Western comps do. Also, I think Lucio has a really central point as a role for the shot callers, because let's be frank, like as much as Reddit wants to tell me that Lucio is super high skill and like there's so much difference in how many pellets he hits and his ult charge, like I never see really any significant amount of more ults one lesser Lucio loses over a better one, right? So I think what it really does is that in between all the confusion and in a hilarious sense where actually our teams are all like high skill players, like the Lucio sets up the shot caller in a way that he can still function at a very high level while, you know, basically keeping his sheep under watch and just, you know, guiding them in all the right directions. And I think in that sense, it's less required also in Korean comps because everybody actually thinks, right? Not everybody's focused on clicking heads all the time. So, yeah, it's actually quite interesting how these things develop because I guess it's kind of a topical issue, but like with the Envious thing, I almost expect this to be sort of one of the issues they had that, you know, Taimu wanted to basically overpower opponents, and he's obviously very much into, you know, improving individually. But when it comes to, you know, going through the motions that what role should you know, occupy in every single moment in the team fight, it's you know, that not that likely that it's happening. And this is where Harry Hook comes in, who's obviously one of the more cerebral players we have in Overwatch. And there I think, you know, just if it's very different if a Taimu runs at you at 100 miles an hour, basically with, you know, either McCree or even Roadhog we saw, right, than any other lower, you know, Matt Fragger, I guess, or the role he occupies, which is like hit scan DPS.
Well, I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about a second ago. Is right now the West has a very high lean on mechanical play versus strategic play, which isn't bad. Again, this is the beginning of Overwatch. It's not like we're like, oh my god, the West is so bad. It's just a difference in focus and play style. Korea always focuses strategy first, mechanics second, but the West usually focuses mechanics first and the strategy to follow out afterwards. And so right now, Lucio enables that style of play. Like, let me get this guy that can outshoot everybody else into the fight as fast as possible. And that's the way right now most professional Overwatch is played to some very degree. I'm not trying to dumb it down that much because there is actually a lot of smart play that goes in. But there's a propensity for not wanting to discuss that strategy, like trying to bring in new maps and rotations. I'm a big believer that the first person that really learns how to play Hanamura, because we saw that whenever Hanamura showed up with Mei, these two curveballs that nobody was expecting a pro play just decimated a tournament. Like everybody's like, we don't know how to play against this. If teams spend time actually learning maps like Temple of Anubis and Volskaya and creating these crazy strategies with heroes that aren't normally used, you can get free wins. But a lot of times that's not what people want to focus on. And that strategy aspect, they want to focus on, let me work on my aim, let me go play some, let's go play some ranked and let's just murder some fools. And sooner or later, once you can only get so mechanically gifted. At some point, the strategic side needs to come into play as well. And I think that's where we're starting to see a lot of teams rotating around that. Is they're starting to go, okay, these guys like to play mechanical, these guys like to play strategic. They're going to start hitting heads. They're going to have different ways of viewpoints on the teams, and people are going to start going their separate ways.
Yeah, and I don't want to lump the West all in one basket because I think actually Rogue does a very good job at what we're criticizing here, right? Because if you think about it, like Rogue is actually the team that popularized 2CP, right? They busted it out. Obviously, Atlantic Showdown had a little bit of a dodgy rule set where the first map was forced and it was a 2CP map. Then they picked a 2CP map. Well, that's 2 free wins against Envious, right? So, and I remember at the time in the Discord, it was like everyone's like, 2CP, wow, it's forced, so bad. And Tivic's like, you guys don't know shit, man. They were obviously practicing.
The beautiful part is he picks Mei, and everybody's like, "Oh, Mei is so bad." Like at that point, remember, everybody was like, "Oh, Mei is trash. She's garbage tier." And all of a sudden, everybody's watching it, and they're like, "Oh shit, this is good. I need to go play some Mei." And now look at our solo queue and our ranked environment now. Mei is everywhere for days.
That's also one of the big success stories of this season, right? Like I looked at the meta report, and Captain Planet was actually very clairvoyant in that sense because, okay. we first have to say, okay, Mei was never 80% picked. But what happened with Mei was she was never picked, and now she has a solid pick rate, right? Even on offense, right? And Mei was starting to come into the meta. Obviously, she received some buffs during the season, I think it was. Or was it the preseason patch?
It was the Blizzard increase, and I believe... I don't know if that was super early on in season 2. Was the change to her?
I think that happened
I want to say it was the same time as Anna.
Yeah.
But I mean, it couldn't have just been that. It couldn't have just been that. I think it was the popularity. I'm saying like that couldn't have been the thing that just pushed her over the edge, because ult charge, obviously she had her Blizzard up, every couple minutes, but I don't know. She went from complete zero back when all the defense heroes were just not picked. Like, if you picked a defense hero, it was basically either an extreme pocket pick, like every once in a while people would pull out the Hanzo and wipe the team. Other than that, defense was just like useless.
Envious was sort of toying with her a little bit before the showdown, and mostly on King's Row, and it was meeting some solid success. I think that sort of opened people's eyes at that point, that Mei has utility in a fight, like just walling someone off and picking someone off.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it was a twofold thing that happened. One, they made the change to her her ult size. Because let's be honest, like they said, it was like, it's only 2 meters, but it was 2 meters in the radius, so it went from like this big to like this big. And then they also made it to where it could pass through shields. And you have to remember, this came out during the time of the 3 tanks, 3 supports. So you had Reinhardt and Winston that were charging in with their shields, and she could just be like, nope, I'm going to throw this in here. Now you're going to get locked down, and we're going to come sweep in and clear it up. I think that it was she ran contrary to the meta and got a buff at the right time to kind of slap that meta in the face a little bit and say, you don't do this anymore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And at first, it was mostly, these either CP point situations, or you brought her out in overtime situations where you basically, win if you place an ultimate on a team that has to stick on the payload. Otherwise, they lose instantly because the overtime ticks down so quickly. But later on, and that was actually the most impressive part for me, was during APAC. That was about 6 weeks into the season where Lunatic High brought out the offensive Mei. And like my mind was just blown. Like, offensive Mei, right? How does that work? Like, how is it just... In a way, I still struggle to understand the underlying concept. Obviously, sometimes that you get someone off guard and he's probably not, mispositioned, and she just capitalizes hard on it. But at the same time, like, how good players actually got at hitting our icicles and therefore, charging the ult up, that was, I think, one of the crazier developments.
Yeah, if we're talking about the change between season 1 and season 2, I think that's one thing that we do have to mention is the dramatic shift from hit scan god king of everything to projectile actually being good. We saw Pharaoh was a big part of season 1, but in season 2 we also saw Hanzo make his first actual competitive appearances.
Yeah.
We saw Mei being competitive, and these are very important heroes. We did see Junkrat drop off, but I think that's just because that Mei was filling the role that they wanted to fill with Junkrat differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Zen for like 2 weeks before they nerfed his orb again.
Yeah.
That was actually, if we go back and look at it statistically, like at the beginning of the season, Zen and Mercy was still very much in the meta. At about 30% pick rate, that was kind of bleeding over, and that is also a concept you said that pros are very, also only human, and some of them like to stick to their, comfortable picks more than others. But Zen was still firmly into the meta, and you have to consider also the Discord nerf. And the Discord nerf really, kind of birthed the meta of the NIP comp, which was 3 tanks, 3 support at the time. And if you think back, NRG had a hunch, actually, on Anna in that sense. They were running the triple support, at least. They weren't running the triple tank, also probably because Zen was still around at that time, right? So it kind of pains me to they must have felt awful. They knew Anna was the next best thing. They just couldn't figure out a comp where it would work. And then an NIP comes along and basically rides the success of that comp, like perfects the execution much more than they could, and rides it till the end of the season, where it, to this day, is not entirely solved, I would say. Like, that must feel awful if you're an RG, right?
Right. And that's what I was kind of noticing, too, is like, I know sometimes they call it the NIRG comp and sometimes they call it the NIP comp because there's like this gray area of who started it first. I mean, naturally, NIP started using it the most effectively, and I think that was because of it seemed like they got, hey, use Ana, nano boost Reinhardt. Reinhardt goes in, starts cleaving everybody, gets a lot of ult charge off of that, earth shatters, rest of team comes, cleans up. Now everybody has a whole bunch of ult charge, so we turn one ult into another ult to win a team fight, to win the next team fight, because now we outnumber them with ults. It was a very methodical approach to doing it, whereas NRG's was very, okay, we got Ana ult, put it on somebody that can do damage, let's try to win this team fight, versus that more solid approach. They were going for, let's win this team fight off of this one play, whereas NIP kind of made it a multi-play style thing, a more of a team approach to how to win with Ana. And I naturally, I think that the Reinhardt is still more effective than ever ulting a Genji or a Roadhog or whatever. I still think it's more valuable than doing a Reaper, but that's just me.
Okay.
Okay, so with I guess we can slow down on the season 2 a bit and more so to season 3, in that there's a few huge changes that just went live, namely the slowing down of the ult charges and how that will, piggybacking off of what you just said with the Reinhardt, was just this snowball effect of, especially on CP maps, if you captured the first point and you had enough left over that you didn't waste, you could just win the game, and that was it. And it was just, it became less of this like slow down, and we can review the plays and we can go over and show, highlight of the first point, because as soon as you started that highlight play, they would already be on the next play in the second capture point. So how do you feel that? Is it just going to create this stale poke fest, or do you think it's going to slow down the game to a comfortable level?
I think that what we're seeing is actually Blizzard's approach to how they want Overwatch to be played. Originally, it was a run-around Call of Duty style, let's murder everybody style game. Yep. And that's what Stopwatch encouraged. Charge as fast as you can, kill as many people as you can, get done. And Blizzard was like, no, we don't like that. Let's use this Timebank system. That seems to be the story of what they're trying to do, is they're trying to slow down the game because they want more strategy. The faster ults charge means the fact that, hey, look, I just used Zarya, Graviton Surge, you're all pulled in, now we just mop up the kills, now we got more ults, now... I don't think that anybody finds that style of play, 1, enjoyable to watch, nor 2, enjoyable to play. And I want a little bit more MOBA strategy out of Overwatch, and I think Blizzard does too. And I think that's what this ult charge is trying to push, and you can see the direction that they're trying to go based off of this. Let's slow down, let's focus on mechanics, let's focus on skirmishing, let's focus on objectives, and not just the murder fest that sometimes occurs.
I think it'll be interesting to see what characters come out as more strong than expected because of this. Like, Roadhog kind of has a shit ult, and he's a solid character. Hook is one of the best abilities in the game, and if the game is 20% less reliant on ults, then maybe Roadhog's going to be really strong. Or maybe even Winston. Winston is in the same boat. D.Va somewhat. Maybe those tanks will be a little bit more potent.
I'm not 100%, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mercy makes a comeback. The ability to throw yourself into a fight, get enough ult charge, and let's say that now that ults are going to be so much more valuable, bringing back somebody that's alive that has an ultimate, I think will have a lot more impact. Plus, even if they add 20%, her ult isn't necessarily the hardest to charge on the face of the earth. You can get it by just damage boosting somebody whenever there's nothing going on, or healing. And so I think that we may see that occur. But again, I think that depends on how the meta pans out and how Sombra affects, because Sombra is going to make Mercy's life a living hell.
Yeah. What about? Okay, go ahead.
There's also something to be said about a player's skill in gaining ult. That's going to be something that's going to be more apparent. What does it really take to get fast ult on Ana? Now it's just, or a week ago, it's just like shoot somebody. What is it, like 20, 25 times, something like that, and you get an ult. Now it's going to be a little 20% more reliant on skill than before. Having those ults up at the fight at the same time that your opponents do is going to be a little bit more important, because before you could just kind of poke, and when they come in, you can maybe get an ult as they come in and engage and like match them that way. It's going to be a little bit more important in that way.
See, I'm kind of curious on how Sombra is going to impact, because since ult turn is important, well, they are important. They're more important, but they're harder to get now. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see a little bit of a skirmish meta occur, where we end up seeing something like Tracer, Genji, Sombra on a team with like a tank and 2 supports. I could easily see that, where people are kind of jumping in and trying to get back out of a fight and trying to use these small skirmishes that'll be occurring all around the place to build ult charge to make the big play. And because right now we have a very linear, I sit on a cart, I have Reaper, I have Ana, I ride the cart, Reinhardt stands in front, Reinhardt shield goes down, Ana ult, charge in, Reaper blossom. Oh, okay, I didn't kill them all, but then here comes their Reaper. It's very, let's just kind of slam into each other and kill each other. I wouldn't be surprised with Sombra's appearance and this ult change if we see a little bit more skirmish that does occur.
How does this affect someone like Zarya? Because Zarya being sluggish, I mean, if out of anyone, her ult takes so long to charge, even though it has to be one of the best ults in the game just for playmaking. Is this going to kick her out of the insane pick rate that she had at one point?
See, I kind of think that this was the Zarya meta more than anything else. I can't remember a different point we did. Like, we saw a lot of Lucio, but we also saw a lot of Zarya, man. I can't remember. I
consider myself a Zarya main. She is ridiculous. She is able to have both utility if you know how to charge her shield up, which they also did just nerf. You have a giant laser and you just cut through the squishies, as well as just as long as you have a healer nearby, you're not going to die. And your ult sets up 100%. You don't need Ana ult. You don't need any of that stuff. You need Zarya +1, and you can wipe a whole team.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, I don't know at what point would you not want a Zarya? Hey, I want to protect this damage dealer. Hey, I want to protect the support. Hey, I want a tank that can also do a lot of damage the longer a team fight goes on. And hey, I want somebody that sets up a team fight. Like, at what point is Zarya not a good pick? I don't know. And I don't know.
The only thing that I think Reinhardt has over her is I can put a shield up whenever I want. It's not really on a cooldown as long as I toggle it correctly.
Before on some podcasts, I think it was about 4 weeks ago, I had the theory that Zarya having a high pick rate is actually not that bad for the game, because she's like the gatekeeper for ridiculous bullshit. Mm-hmm. In the sense that, like, would you ascribe to that, concept that if she was actually out of the meta, like, we could potentially see like totally different things coming into play? Because sometimes I feel like, okay, obviously she sort of helps the Beyblade by making it very hard to shut down in a sense. Like, even like the obvious counterplay of having your own Ana sleep Reaper right away while she's ulting is obviously, negated by her in a sense. But it's like, I wonder how much she limits very, one-trick strats, in that sense that while she's obviously high pick rate, she still doesn't feel so abusive, or, honestly, you also have to consider it like anti-fun to play and to watch, right? That, like, if you're designing the perfect game, I think a lot of people would answer, yeah, okay, every hero has the same pick rate. I don't necessarily ascribe to that theory, because if a hero like Zarya is fun to play and to watch, and also, visualize the skill of the player, why is that bad? Right?
Yeah, and I ascribe to the same thing. I don't necessarily think there's ever going to be a point where everything should be at the same percent pick rate, because
no,
we're already seeing the fact that the positions aren't balanced. We're always going to end up, like right now, until we get a whole bunch more supports, we're going to end up having supports having a predominantly high pick. And maybe Sombra might affect Reinhardt's pick rate. But I'm very curious how hard Sombra is going to affect Zarya. Like, everybody thinks about Lucio's sound barrier, and they think about Reinhardt's shield, but really the ability to disable Zarya could be extremely impactful for like you can essentially shut her down by like throwing out your ultimate. Now her shields are gone. Now she can't generate any more energy on herself. Now she can't use any of her shields on anybody. And then time it, and while this team fight's going on, hack her immediately after that drops off and remove her entirely from a situation, because if she doesn't have any energy charge, she's kind of not worth. Like, she just sits there and soaks damage. Like, at least everybody else after like that wear down period can do something. Like, they have something with their gun that they can do damage with. Yeah. Even Reinhardt can just swing away and do something. Maybe Sombra is the pick for Zarya to slow her down, but that's gonna require some skill to do.
Yeah, it's gonna take extreme communication and everything for everybody to focus her down. But she is one of those. She's so reliant on all of her abilities to power up her gun, because her gun is just like a pool noodle if it's not powered up, and it's her shields bouncing off either one person, or even if you're good with your other teams, or you shield the other tank in front of you and they absorb the damage for you and you position yourself well. If she couldn't hit any of her buttons, she's useless. I mean, to be honest, not completely, but she's one of the more useless tanks.
I think she might fall off in some maps. Like King of the Hill, I see her probably not being picked because she's probably going to have trouble getting Graviton up in a round at this point. So that might be it. But I mean, to me, Zarya's biggest strength was her bubble that she could give other characters for plays. I mean, that's just her thing. Not so much her damage. I mean, you can kind of like zone her out and weapon heckle her a bit. But her damage only really comes into play when you get real close. And that's not the problem. The bubble, I think, is the problem that makes her such a high pick rate, because you can do the Beyblade type things, because they're not going to get CC'd. It basically shuts down completely counters to a Beyblade or Genji. You throw it on a bubble on the Genji, he can get probably a kill or two before the bubble is broken or disappears, and at that point the damage is done. So I don't know. I think Blizzard should have probably looked at that, not her damage, because she is a fun tank to play, mainly because she's so dangerous. She's a threat because she does so much damage. Like, that's how she makes space. She walks forward, has a big beam that does a lot of damage, and you have to kind of work around it. And in that sense, she's a tank that makes space through threat. But I don't know. I think if I would have liked them to take the bubble and make it not have like an over blast effect. So a Zarya bubble is what, 200 HP? And you hit it with 2 Farah rockets, it blocks like 240 damage, I think, instead of 200, because like it's 1 point that once it breaks, that damage just disappears. So like granular damage is the way to break a shield efficiently, and big burst damage isn't. So I think they should have looked at that. So that would make it so you could burst through a shield more reliably with more characters.
Yeah, Bullshit. I really like what you hit on with that. I hadn't really contemplated that about map selection whenever you were first starting talking about that might be something that impacts Zarya. I would imagine that perhaps like some of the maps that we don't see in regular rotation, such as Eichenwald, might not be too beneficial for her, because like if you think about it, there's going to be so many different attack points and such a long range that you can attack, specifically once you get to the bridge section. After she uses her shield, if you bait out her shield, you can actually do a significant amount of damage to her without her being useful, because she can't get close enough.
Yeah,
that might be big impact. Also, while you were talking, it reminded me of Zarya came out in Heroes of the Storm. I don't play the game, but I subscribe to the subreddit just to keep on top of it. I got the biggest kick out of whenever she came out. Like, everybody's like, "Oh my God, she's so OP! Blizzard, what have you done? This is broken." And I mean, she had a very similar layout to how she plays in this, and it was just like, okay, I hadn't really thought about it because she's just been a staple for forever. But now that I think about her gameplay mechanics, yeah, maybe Heroes, you're right.
So, okay, my biggest thing is that a lot of the times we see these, we pick like NIP comp, and then it's just verse the NIP comp once it's ingrained in the meta. And it's this mirror match of who gets their ult first, or like the Beyblade comp, who gets their Beyblade first. Do you think that season 3, obviously it's defined by how many heroes we have in the game, because there's only so many people, there's only so many comps you can create, but are we going to start to see more of this, they pick A, so we're going to pick B to kill them, and rather than doing this A versus A type deal? Do you think they're going to see more variations in team comps?
I would pray to God, and I hope so. Like, so much. Like, I'm getting tired of the mirror match to a certain degree that I would never propose this with the amount of heroes we have. I almost want to go to something like League of Legends, pick ban style, just so that way we don't see the same thing over and over and over again.
You can't, though, because we have 23? Yeah.
I'm not proposing it, but it's like in my brain sometimes I think about it. I'm just like, oh, can we see something other than a Beyblade? Can we see something other than the anti-comp? Can we see something other than the NIP comp? And I think that as we start to get more international events, we're going to start seeing more scope. My what I would love is for Blizzard to actually start scoping more towards heroes played in certain fashions. Like they scope for it. They say these are attack heroes and these are defense heroes. But oh, by the way, the defense heroes don't really do what you want them to do, and the attack heroes are just good all the time. And if they actually molded more into that, and you started seeing nice variants, which we actually, let's be honest, in season 2 we saw a lot more variants than we saw in season 1. Season 1 was like McCree, and it was like McCree, and then oh, by the way, let's toss in Soldier there for a little while and back to McCree again. So we're starting to see more variants. I think as we start seeing people learn the game more, because don't get me wrong, the pros are playing really well, but I don't think that until we actually start seeing hero rotation become a larger factor, and we start seeing people get picked, where we start seeing people like Tailspin bringing out Farah on King's Row whenever she's totally not meta and force the other team to make a selection across from it, we won't start seeing too much variance. We need to go back to seeing, whatever Blizzard's doing, we need to go back to seeing changes during a map. One comp shouldn't be good from the very moment the time the doors open until the end. If that's the way that Blizzard's doing their their buffs and all that other stuff, I think that they're taking the wrong approach. I think that during
choke point type deal.
Yeah. Here's a stat for you. During the Overwatch Open, the tournament where basically only Western teams participated, only 12 heroes of a cast of 22 heroes were played. Only 12. And it was 12 because in the first week, actually, people really didn't realize how strong Beyblade was, and then people found out, and everyone was playing Beyblade. If you were to do a statistical analysis on the second week of W Open, it would be
like
ridiculous.
8 or 9.
8 or 9, and if you scratch like the 5%, you might come down to 7 or something, right? Yeah. It's ridiculous in that sense. And we had these metas before, especially, we were talking before in the cast with double Zenyatta, first it was Genji, later it was double Tracer, or some variation of Tracer Genji, and then double Winston. I wonder how much the pro players are always to the, metaphorical truth of how Overwatch is supposed to be played. Basically, if you were to run a simulation that would play Overwatch optimally given this, the parameters of the real skill level of plays that they could achieve at any given time or have, I wonder how often pro players how far away they are from the optimal way to be played, because it feels like a lot of them, look for comfort in these set metas where they just play against each other. Obviously, some stuff is obviously too strong to ignore, but then again, I don't see, for instance, why, and I think Korea has almost figured out how the Beyblade is counted. I don't know what changed that the West couldn't have done that. Right.
Well, I think it's going to be a twofold thing. Once teams get structure, I think specifically after the Overwatch Open, Overwatch League happens, we're going to start seeing coaches and analysts, and if people are settling into towns, they're going to build a structure around that stadium or whatever it is that they've got. And I think that'll be a big point, because there's going to be some guy that's job is just going to be sitting there watching the team going, what if we tried this? And so we'll start seeing things break a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of people tend to forget what meta is, and it seems like we're all ex-League players, ex-MOBA players, so we're a little bit more familiar with metas. But even CS:GO people should be familiar with it because how you buy guns is technically meta in CS:GO.
Yeah,
it's just the most effective way to win in a generic situation, and that's all a meta comp is. Once you start figuring out what the holes in the meta comp are, then you start developing into a new meta. And so that's where the big point's going to come into play. If you look, I wholly agree with what you're saying, is the fact that I don't necessarily think that the way Overwatch should be played is how it's always played on the pro level, because most innovation tends to occur at the high-end ranked area, and not necessarily with people sitting around going, this might be the best solution. Don't get me wrong, that's where a lot of those discussions happen, but a lot of times it's more like somebody's playing against somebody and they're like, damn, that Pharah really shut down our comp. I didn't think of doing that or using it in that way. And now then they post something on Reddit, somebody else sees something, and that's how these things grow. And I think that right now we're too new in Overwatch and we're too structured on believing that we know how to play the game. Like, sooner or later you have to accept the fact that you don't know what you don't know to improve. And I think right now a lot of people are too caught up in the, well, a lot of these people just turned pro, so they're like, I'm the best there is, I know everything. And not everybody's that egotistical, but to go where I'm saying is, they believe that they know exactly how to play the game, and their approach is right, and that the other person's approach isn't right. And that's where we have this very stale meta that comes from, is I don't think that people are really wanting to buck the trend. People don't want to play the new maps because they're not comfortable on them. People don't want to play the new heroes until they're comfortable on how to play against it. And I think that's just going to be kind of, until we start getting those shakeups, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, hell, you saw everybody was like, it's like the last couple of weeks of ranked, and you guys put out Sombra. This is the worst thing ever, Blizzard. Like, people don't take the change very well at all. Like, when are they supposed to put out Sombra? In the week in between this season and the next? Oh, so that means the fact that we'll never get another hero ever except in between seasons? Now what happens if they expand the seasons? Oh, well, I guess we're only gonna get one hero a year now. Like, you can't put in these false rules. And if you start putting in all these false rules and assumptions, you just stagnate the game. And I'm praying that maybe we'll see some changes inside of this as teams stabilize and start bringing in these analysts.
I mean, there are, good arguments for competitive integrity. Like, for instance, Albion raised a solid point with Sombra that she might actually be, invalidating the results of the recent tournaments in a sense, right? Now the next stage is played on that. And while if you look at the time frames, and I think Trips, you pointed it out in our hangout, it's basically they wanted her up for the free week. That's
the only reason. Right. That is literally the only reason. Because people are going to be playing this game for the first time, whether, we've been covering the game for a year-ish and plus a little bit. People have no idea what this game is. The normal people that just come home and play on their consoles, they don't play PC games. Because you got to remember, Overwatch is still like a, generic console game that everyone can play. Your, 13-year-old cousin or whatever. They just come in, they go, oh, hey, what's this game on the marketplace? And they download it, and they want to play it. Now, imagine if they did that last weekend, and they go, oh, okay, this is cool. I'm going to buy this game. And then they buy the game, and all this new stuff just comes out randomly. Yeah, they might be excited because there's more stuff coming out, but at the same time, they just played a game, learned exactly what it is. They can't just switch it immediately. They have to have it ready for people to play it.
Yeah.
Well, I just think it's funny the fact that everybody was so pissed about how long the Sombra arc was taking. Oh, we're so tired of load screens.
You're gonna piss off Reddit so much.
And then they're like, hey, here's Sombra. And then everybody is like, oh, well, you shouldn't have given us Sombra yet. We're so mad. It's like, how do you win? How do you win in that scenario?
As if the development cycle was actually limited, by the ARG moving forward. It's like, yeah, I guess we can, be a little bit slower because these guys are actually very shit at finding our clues. So get a coffee, like as if that was actually the case. Obviously not. Like, it was always going to be this way. Like we were speculating that Sombra was maybe a thing that could have been released before BlizzCon, and I still think that this could have been true if they had like one more thing that's in the pipelines now that we don't know of yet. If that was ready for BlizzCon, not necessarily just a hero, but I mean, then again, like the entire hacking thing, I mean, that was super obviously going to happen, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, it was Yeah.
They did it a lot better. It could have been a lot more cringeworthy.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, to back up what you're saying is that there's all of these game companies always have something in the back burner. And you're crazy if you don't realize the fact that every single time Overwatch puts out something, suddenly there's some new hero news on League of Legends or something else like that happens. Every single time a bit news comes here, like the other game is just like, whoa, wait a minute, they're going to try to steal some of our player base. So let's throw something over here. Like what? Yeah. Wait, we just had Sombra come out. Everybody's getting calm and chill. And wait, what just happened today? Oh, didn't we just get a new hero teased in League or something like that?
Yep. Dude, yeah. It's the same way that Blizzard's always worked, though. They always plan like World of Warcraft expansions and large patches right before another big MMO comes out or like goes into beta or something.
Do you honestly think like Riot would move this quickly with revenue share and everything if the OW League wasn't knocking on the door? No way. Like obviously the owners are applying pressure now, but at the same time, like the market pressures are actually, Blizzard actually chose a very opportune time for that, because when they announced this rev share, like big thing idea with the OW League, like these things weren't in the industry, like announced by Riot, and then they moved forward fairly quickly. Obviously, there's still huge issues to overcome, and I think in that sense, I mean, it's hard to say if Blizzard is, up front, because we don't have any real, data or knowledge what it's going to be like. But at the same time, like this is obviously like going through the channels where two competitors are just trying to outmaneuver one each other.
Well, I mean, naturally, Riot has to be a little bit nervous, specifically about the structure of Overwatch League. And this is something that we know from different videos of different people that they've been planning for a while now. But this whole idea of having hometown teams and having teams based in certain locations has got to make Riot super nervous, because if you think about it, Riot makes a good amount of money right now, but everything is centrally located inside of LA. That's the way all of the teams structure there. But if like teams have like to meet Blizzard's criteria of everybody having these like different towns, and that's where like C9 or TSM is from or whatever else like that, that means the fact that their Heroes team, their Hearthstone players, their Overwatch
Smash
players, like all their Smash players can now start using these different things and are now moving out of the LCS format, which is everything all close and contained. So now all of these teams can start moving between each other to all of their different stadiums, and that hurts their revenue share. So they had to come back with something. I also think a part of it might have been the fact that all of those videos that Monte Cristo was putting out, where he was just like lighting fires and like just being like, this is my problem with Riot right now, bam, and like, here, let me make a 40-minute video talking trash about you.
I honestly like that's what's super annoying to me right now, that he's really lighting a candle under that Riot's ass, and is not the least bit critical of Blizzard, because he knows what the company structure is like, right? Like obviously he was kind of burnt by Riot, and he has to wisen up to what happened to him. At the same time, like there are big question marks behind the OW League, like potentially for all of esports, that currently no esports journalist is really touching with a broomstick from, like it's so hot, the topic, and nobody wants to get on the bad side of the big sports teams. Blizzard, obviously, casters are tuning back their personality to not be too edgy, to be on a Blizzard showcase. It's like, man, and nobody's really, like, the usual barkdogs that you would expect to criticize this are very, very quiet about this, and this is honestly very annoying to me.
Well, okay, the two things I want to say. One, as a caster, I have to admit that right now I have no idea. Like, all of us are kind of like, what are we doing? Like, are we going to be working for teams? Are we going to be going to specific stadiums? Is that, like, I'm the only caster for Overwatch in Texas that I know of right now. So does that mean that I just get free reign in Texas for right now? Is that how it's going to work? Am I going to be are you only allowed to be a Blizzard employee? So does that now mean I have to become employed by you and stop my other job? How does all this work? Like, we know kind of the gateway because of that one video. That's my second thing that they've released, which is the Crusher 99 advert. If you want to know why I'm kind of nervous about Overwatch League, it's the fact that they chose a name like Crusher 99. I was like, that's like the most 14-year-old gamer tag that I've ever heard. is this what Overwatch League is going to be focused at? Is that demographic? And if so, I might be in the wrong field right now.
I was like, okay, this Sombra thing is going to be super cringe, and it wasn't. And then comes Crusher 99, and it was like an epiphany. They saved up their cringe for this very moment, right?
And it's on YouTube so much. I can't watch an Overwatch video without being like, here's your name, make sure you own it, and do all this other stuff. And then out of everything, it's like, oh, by the way, it all collapses. Wait, what? That was the moment I was like, oh, come on, Blizz, please, this is the worst commercial ever.
It was like the
Crusher
last...
99, die.
It was like the last gift Chris Metzen gave, like his last heart blood spilled onto the paper. Like, this is how you announce it. I don't know, like, bless him, but sometimes it's really he produced some pretty cringe, story moments sometimes.
We're gonna start flaming Chris Metzen now.
I mean, he's awesome. Like, obviously, like I read pretty much every lore book that this company has put out, but I mean, at some point, it's not all about friendship and love, is it? Like,
no,
fantasy is a little bit more, and the genre has evolved in a sense too, right? Mm-hmm. Now it's about rape, penises, and red weddings.
Thank you, George R. R. Martin. We appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Now that we've efficiently gone off topic a bit, the thing I wanted to say, because I'm gonna run a little bit late just because we have a guest. So the main things I wanted to question is, what about the changes? What about the soldier change, the D.Va change, and I really don't think it'll affect anything, the Torbjörn change. How are those things going to affect the way that the meta is as well? Because people are saying Soldier's a boss now. Soldier is just, with his more damage, I don't think it does less spread, does it? It spreads less, like you can
it depends on
toggle it. Yeah.
Like, so the longer you hold down, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just as far as, I guess, Torbjörn, because he's the easiest. Is that really going to be that big of a change that he can stack his own armor now? Or his scraps?
Can I be honest?
Because
I got to jump in on this. I think that Torbjörn is underappreciated inside of the meta right now. With all of this talk about how to play Overwatch and how to use Ana, have you ever seen, it happens in some of the Korean streams, whenever somebody uses a nano boost on a molten coring Torbjörn and just right clicks through a team. It is one of the most terrifying things. Like, screw Beyblade, screw throwing it on freaking Reinhardt, just throw it on the little guy and let him charge in and murder everything. It's beautiful to watch. It's like nightmare stuff. But that being said, no, I don't think it's going to be that.
I think the biggest change is actually not really the stacking thing, but that people don't get free ult charge of turrets that you need to reapply, where people just like, oh, okay, I guess our Ana leads like 50% ult charge, so we can make a successful push. Let's just, poke the Torbjörn turret. Oh, nice, he keeps repairing it, otherwise it's not up for the push. He really doesn't have any options, like he can't let it die, or otherwise his, entire character is kind of pointless, so I guess you could put it in a spot where it's not that easy to reach, but then it's also not that effective. That was kind of always an issue, and now it seems less, of a ultimate battery in a sense. So I think this has potential. And then let's not forget, man, there's still Koreans, and even though a lot of people actually considered the icon vault strat to be sort of, styling on nerds, it was kind of well thought out, wasn't it? Like, yeah. It had some methodology behind it, and it was, I actually like the way he plays the turret makes me think that he actually entertained the thought of playing this and actually tinkered around on the map with it. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually viable on at least on some positions on some maps, right?
Yeah, I would say back on Eichenwald, I think he has plenty of use. I know everybody talked about how Bastion, because it seems to be like Bastion themed map naturally with all the dead Bastions everywhere. But I think that he actually has more utilitarian purpose than Bastion does inside of that map, because you can, like, specifically after point 1, whenever you're pushing the payload up, and if you're a defender, you have so many different points you have to try to defend because there's so many different access points. He's very useful for going, okay, I want to hold down this area, but I'm going to go over here. And then naturally, once you see your turret go down, you're like, oh, they're over there. Let's go back over there. It's a nice warning system. But Again, I think that goes back to effective use. Like sometimes you see Sombra get used efficiently. Sometimes you see Torbjörn come out. I think people downplay his effective use with his left and right click and the damage that it can produce. Like everybody laughed at Mei until we saw Mei get used in just the right spot on just the right map and just the right effective nature. I think that we'll start seeing, the longer we go on, we're going to start seeing some of these heroes. People go, oh, I never thought of doing that.
Dude. Like, can I introduce you to the concept we had on this cast called the shed? The shed is basically the place you put all the shitty ass characters in that you want to have no business of when talking about competitive play. Like Bastion is way up in there. Like, and Torbjörn definitely is one of those for me, at least. Like, I really don't want to see him anywhere near competitive because his playstyle, like, even if he didn't, like, if his playstyle was to turn out like, okay, you're not placing the turret, but you're just running around as the Torbjörn hero, and the turret is really just an afterthought, it would still be lame, in my opinion, simply because, like, his left click is basically, like, it almost feels Hanzo-ish, in a sense. You know, it's, like, so random because the projectile moves so slowly. And then the right click is also, I don't know. Like, and then his modeler is so awkward to hit. His, like, to headshot him is always, I don't know. Like,
I guess I should back up off this because I've mentioned Torbjörn like 3 times. There's going to be like people that are going to be like, who the hell is this Matrym guy? And why does he have like this hard on from Torbjörn? So I don't actually believe that he's all that effective. I think he's a fun hero, and I do like the fact that I do like bucking the meta. And I think he's a great hero to use that with. But as far as the base of the conversation, I think you kind of hit it.
I mean, you don't need to hide it. Like, I can actually see the dwarf porn in your glasses reflected on your monitor.
You have found me out, internet. What's going on?
Okay, so Torbjörn, he's still, I mean, you might see him cheese every once in a while, but still, it's more so on the Soldier. Do you think Soldier is going to replace Reaper? Or, I mean, they serve different purposes, obviously, but, you know, there's only a couple slots. So is the buff enough for Soldier? Because Soldier was seen for a while just basically, I mean, he'd fire a lot and he'd damage the enemy team, but he wasn't able to finish anybody off.
I think any sort of prediction we can make is probably going to be wrong at this point, because there's no way I could have seen like a 3-3 comp be so terrifying. Like, and the Mei point earlier. So, like, really, who's to say what's going to come out? But with that said, Soldier is a pretty good shield breaker now. Real good. If you damage boost him, I mean, shield's going to drop, like, I think it's 2 or 3 clips. And if he's got some support with that, it'll go down pretty quick. So that might be a utility for him. He might have some utility with Nano Boost, because, I mean, he could sprint. If the shield's down, he could sprint, get position, and pretty much just flatten whatever he can see. So that might be a version of Beyblade now.
Is he the best ult Nano Boost target now? Maybe after Genji?
Genji, I would definitely say, is the best still.
Or Reaper, obviously, still?
I'd say Genji's probably better than Reaper now, because Genji can teleport his Beyblade wherever he wants it to go. So be effective that way. Reaper, I'm not sure. I haven't played with it enough to say if it's debilitating or not. But like Reinhardt ulted right now is like not nearly as terrifying as it used to be. Any character can kite him. And if they have a Lucio and you have a Lucio, you know, it's just a wash and it's just a kite. It's nice to make space. But as far as Soldier goes for his ult, that's pretty terrifying. You could kill 2 or 3 characters real quick before, like, people even know what's happening.
I see Soldier as being... Soldier's purpose in life is he's like the most utilitarian. He's like the bread and butter of what Overwatch can... Like, is conceptualized. It's like he's a guy with a gun and he has the ability to heal people, so he kind of does a little bit of everything, but he's not super effective at anything.
Shoutouts to Chris Metzner at this point, right?
Yeah, but no, I mean that's his job. His job is to be a little bit of everything, and that's good. And I think that it's going to come down to how, like, what is the meta form from here? Is it going to be, does Sombra buck the trend enough to where maybe we are going to go with a more skirmish style? In which case, he'll have a great home. Because what happens whenever Sombra jumps in and kills your support, that extra healing is going to be super useful. plus the fact that he actually does a decent amount of damage. I mean, like an Ana and a soldier can keep a team alive for a real long time. You throw down that healing thing, and then Ana throws a healing grenade, boom, like a team can stay alive for a real long time. Yeah. But I think it's just going to come down to how crappy does Sombra make supports feel, and how good is she at killing them, or how good is she at encouraging a meta that kills supports. And I think that'll be where we see if we still stick with the McCree train, or if we stick into that extra little bit of utilitarian purpose that Soldier brings.
Okay. And I guess last would just be the D.Va, because when D.Va got her defense matrix change, you saw this huge influx of D.Va being played everywhere, at least in comp. And she had a really, popular few weeks, but then she kind of died off again. And people, learned how to avoid her or just headshot her and she's dead. And, especially when they changed her defense matrix even more to have a little bit more of a cooldown after toggling it, so it couldn't just be up to avoid projectiles and up and down and up and down. Do you think that the health boost is even going to help her out that much?
I think she's just naturally going to be stepping on Winston's toes, and Winston's naturally going to be stepping on her toes for the rest of their existence until they really do mess with the characters. So with that said, you kind of got to say, is she better than Winston in some way now? Probably not. The extra health is okay, but Winston, usually how you do is you jump in, and if you have ult, it's like his second life, oh, I'm gonna die, 1,000 hit points, I'm just gonna keep doing what I was doing. D.Va can't really do that. Her ult kind of zones a little bit, but I don't know. As for what she can do that Winston can't do, she can push people around better than Winston, which is interesting. And she can eat up more damage than Winston, which is interesting. But I don't know if that's that relevant. Maybe it is. I still, with all of that said, I still feel like the pros haven't fully realized the power of defense matrix. I feel like that ability is incredible, and people really haven't figured out how to use that in a coordinated team environment to really leverage it. I mean, you could do some conceptually crazy shit with that, and I'll just leave it at that.
I've always kind of seen that D.Va is kind of the gatekeeper for Pharah not becoming meta. Is because the fact that just the changes to defense matrix just shoved her so far out of meta. These changes to Pharah and how she flies, I think, are amazing. I think they're so good. And I think that might make her relevant in a different fashion to where she can get into those weird places, that seems to be kind of what this patch is based on. Let's get people into weird spots to make some strategical choices with Sombra and this Pharah change. And giving her that health boost makes her just a little bit harder to kill from the Pharah, who already has the defense matrix to eat up all of her rockets. I just think that seems to be her place in life, is just kind of make Pharah just go, no, you sit over there, we're tired of Pharah Mercy, we don't ever want it coming back. And so the moment somebody picks Pharah Mercy, then D.Va walks in there okay, screw it, we're going to switch to something else.
Yeah. That's actually super interesting to me, because there's actually, pro players and analysts who sing very different songs. Because, for instance, Too Easy famously absolutely thinks she's ridiculous right now. D.Va is way strong, and she's way too good, and he's been addressing that constantly on Twitter. And then there's someone like Flame who says Pharah will be firmly back in the meta. How do these two things come together? Makes no sense to me. For instance, when Envy kicked Tailspin, he was like, okay, this is not the move right now. This is actually going to be, a Tailspin patch. And I honestly don't know who to believe right now, because a lot of people also said that the Pharah changes are practically inconsequential to her. And that she, also because obviously soldier buffs, which will keep her down much more than even the McCree could. I think it's fair to say that his damage output is now higher at that range where you would effectively encounter her. Obviously, you also have to take into consideration how strong Mercy will be, because she's always these two seem to come in pairs almost always when one or the other is in the meta. So it's we're again in a situation where half the pro community says, as was at the beginning of this season with Anna, like, okay, she's shit, and the other says, okay, this is ridiculous. Look at her crits. Like, you have all these options, and it will be quite interesting to see where Farah lands, I think.
Well, Farah suffers, like, I love seeing good Farah play, especially in an esports environment. But there's two major changes that are coming in. One, Soldier, which means the fact that he has a good capability to actually kill her from range. Then in addition to that, we're also bringing Sombra in, who has the SMG. While it's got a larger spray at range, she does have the ability to take down somebody at long distance as well, which I think is not good for Farah. But on the flip side of that, this changes with D.Va. Also, remember, she's super armored, so that means the fact that she actually takes less damage from all of these like smaller bullets coming in, which directly hits Soldier and hits Sombra, as well as Tracer and everybody else, to weaken them. I think that all of these combinations together are going to create something. And what this something is yet is, I don't know. I think that we're going to get something switched up, and I think that we're going to see some new heroes enter the meta. One hopes, and we move away from Beyblade. But I think that you guys are kind of right on with it. Is until we stumble upon that perfect thing, we're not going to see it. And I wouldn't be surprised if most of the people over Christmas break, and since we've got Overwatch League, we got all these combines and stuff like that are happening. A lot of people are probably going to figure out something and not say a freaking word. And they're going to figure out this really great combo, and they're going to be using that to try to push themselves through the Overwatch League. I think that's going to be a big part of that.
Yeah.
The one thing is that obviously, there's still some Overwatch to be played in Korea, and there's also MLG knocking on the door, right? So there's two occasions where, I mean, nobody's going to hide their strategies in an MLG final, I would assume, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that doesn't mean that we will have had enough time until that point to see if it works. And I also think the whole Overwatch League kind of slowed down the process of orgs signing new players, and maybe also players now are less motivated to scrim with their team when they think, okay, we're going to be redrafted, why build synergy now, right? So even if you are a serious team right now, it could be harder to get competitive scrims unless you actually stay in Korea, where it's quite unlikely this will have any impact, and OGN will obviously continue. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how it builds up towards MLG.
Mm-hmm. I think there's just too many variances that you can just say, this is it, this is what's going to happen, this hero, let's go.
Yeah, no, I think Vulture's right. I mean, I just wanted to get a little bit of a Discord going, but it is. We could say, because of X, Y, and Z reason, this is going to be the comp, but then everything just totally changes. Like we said very early on in today, once Sombra gets in, everything's just going to be flipped on its head.
I got a prediction for Farah.
Let's see.
So if you do solo ranked, there's always going to be some shithead Farah up in the skybox the whole map, just shooting shots and never hitting anybody. That'll be their role.
Nice.
This is true.
Okay.
I can definitely see it, specifically on I'm going to call it right now. You're going to see them most on any of the King of the Hill maps. They're just going to be forever away, just firing into the spot.
A little ant way up in the air, not hitting anything. Yeah. They're shooting a rocket. You've left spawn. You've died already, and then the rocket that they shot at you finally hit lands.
Well, bullshit. Farah's going to be so far away. It's time for Widowmaker to become meta again. Sniper.
There you go.
Boom.
Solo queue. Yeah.
And the only thing you hear is from way up above. There's an echoed, muffled noise because of the distance, where the guy says "Orbital strike." And it's absolutely nothing, simulating playing Command & Conquer or whatever.
Justice reigns from space. Is that the line?
Yeah.
From way above, yeah.
They're just going to make an astronaut fucking skin for her, and it's just... Yeah. I know how to fly. I don't know how to shoot yet. I'm still working on that. But, okay. I think that unless somebody else has another topic... a short topic before we wrap it up so we don't run too long. Anything on the table? No. Okie doke. I'm going to give Matrym a little bit. Ooh, that was gross. That was squeaky. I'm going to give him a floor a bit to plug anything, social media, or if you have anything going on that you want people to pay attention to.
I tend to do most of the weekly cast for Cal League. So if you guys want to check out some of the up and comers, like we've had several teams that moved into being well known from this, such as Kingdom, Rise Nation, Sodipop. A lot of these teams got their start right with us and playing with us. So I would always recommend checking that out. It's a lot of fun. Additionally, if you're interested in content, I'm starting to produce my own solo content, and it's going to be on my YouTube channel, which is Matrym Gaming. And naturally, follow me on Twitter, Matrym_GG.
Okay. And Yiska, I think you just put out it's kind of plugging ourselves, but it was more so your solo content that you put out on the channel.
Yeah, I made a list. Basically, the concept was to explore what would happen if the draft happened today. And I sat down with Scribe because I had some fruitful discussions with him in the past. And I think it came out well. If you really don't want to invest, like it was super long, almost 2 hours. If you don't want to invest like a huge amount of time, probably watch rather the last hour than the first. Also not only because of the quality of the discussion, but this is where it gets into the bread and butter of the situation, because the top 6 was okay. The order of people in the top 6 was controversial, but not really who's in there. But for the lower ranks, it was actually quite hard to figure out. And obviously, in general, I want to also say thank you to Matrym for coming on. You actually messaged me because of the last week's cast, which was also quite successful. Thanks for the guys that watched that. And it's still that watch in a sense, the show where not everyone's a dad, but everyone sure as shit looks like one, And
I may or may not be one. I'll just be quiet over here.
Yeah.
Okay. And Volcha, I know you said you recently joined a team, so you probably another team. So do you have anything solo going on, or you've just been focusing on playing?
Just focusing on playing at this point. Eventually, I want to make some videos, but I want to get good first. You know what I mean? Before I can actually make videos.
Yeah, with a U, get good.
Yeah. This is how you play fair. You go up into the skybox and try to spawn camp. That's what you do.
Okie doke. Well, thanks again, everybody who is watching, for joining us on another week. If you want to support us, like I said last week, YouTube is probably our #1 hub, but we have social media across the board. I'm not going to spit into it too much, but I think that about wraps it up. Next week, I think we're having a break week because for us Americans, it is a holiday. So 2 weeks from now will be the next cast. And other than that, if you guys have any ideas or comments on anything that we talked about, make sure to leave them on Reddit or on the actual YouTube video itself. And I think that about wraps it up. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night.